I think everybody needs to get ready for FTX to become an operating company again. I mean, I think they're going to bring it back.
Really?
It's going to come back. I mean, FTX was a really good product.
Hey everyone, welcome to our Traded Black podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Shad Dales. Let's get right into it today. A lot of big announcements regarding cannabis. We'll touch a little bit about gold. It's reaching some pretty good highs, up 20% since its lows from back in November, along with the crypto rally that continues. And we'll welcome everybody in. But first, before we begin, all views in the Traded Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice. And the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. All right, let's welcome in lead financial writer, TDR, Ben Smith. How was the week, sir?
The week has been really fine. Thank you very much. Lots of news in the cannabis space, as always. So ready to get into it.
Wasn't it? All right, good to see you. Millennial entrepreneur, Anthony Verrill. How's weather in Florida? You got the mock turtleneck on. You guys getting cold weather there?
It's actually cool today. It's about 60 degrees.
60 degrees.
So,
Ooh, that's chilly, huh, Ben?
It cooled off. I was actually excited this week when you were like, "So you want to fly up to Toronto to like get some meetings done?" And I was like, "Actually, the cold weather sounds nice."
Is it true, people down the south, like once you have too much of one thing, you actually do crave some cold weather and snow?
I don't mind it because you can dress appropriately for the cold and it's not that bad. Now, I'm not talking about like Toronto in like mid-January when the wind's ripping off the lake.
Yeah.
Maybe like a day when it's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
But the heat you can't hide from. It's hot outside. You walk outside. It's sweating. It's hot in your house. The AC's ripping. I prefer the cold.
Got to have the life of Brady Cobb. Lives in southern Florida and then heads up to Aspen for a good portion of the. I don't know how long he goes up there, but I checked out his Instagram. His life looks pretty nice out in Colorado there.
It's the way to do it. Scott Greiper from Viridian, who was one of the first people I met in the cannabis industry, as soon as he started closing deals, he's like, "I'm out of New York. I'm going to Aspen."
Yeah. Don't blame him.
He lives in Aspen now full time. It's like summer's amazing.
Yeah.
Winter's amazing. It's an awesome mountain life is good if that's what you want to do.
Nice lifestyle to think about and dream about, right, Ben?
Yeah, I'd love to be there. I'd love to live in places like Switzerland if I retire, even though I have no family or anything down there. That life definitely sounds appealing to me.
Oh, best buddy of mine, brought in the year 2000, just got licked in an igloo in Switzerland as 2000 came in. What a safe place to be when everybody thought the world was going to end. I'm showing my age right now.
Y2K, and then 2012.
Exactly.
I mean, everyone's had the crazy shit at one point in time.
Yeah. Gents, let's begin. Cannabis industry. Two big announcements this week. Let's first start with Curaleaf, who announced that they're exiting production and cultivation facilities in 3 western states that include California, Oregon, and Colorado, identifying the reasons being difficult operating environments, most notably against the black market. They will instead place a laser focus on cash generation, its core revenue-driving markets moving forward. So we've talked about this in past podcasts where a lot of these companies will need to focus on profitability this year, Ben, versus, say, market share. I have to ask, is like this announcement, is this a sign of things to come? Like, meaning, are we going to see more and more announcements like this from other companies as the year progresses?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is just the right sizing of a company that is looking at their portfolio, which is dispersed all throughout the U.S. They have a big footprint, obviously, and just looking at where to allocate resources, essentially. It's my understanding that Curaleaf, they're still profitable in those in some of the operations of the states that they're pulling back from, but they're looking to disallocate resources to better or more profitable opportunities. So it's not like they're like hugely money losing and they have to shed them at all costs. I think they're just like sort of trimming the fat, so to speak, on their footprint and really focusing on the most core profitable opportunities and locales out there. And, in those mature markets in Colorado and California, some of them aren't those. So they're just right-sizing the ship. They're just making cuts and really focusing on generating free cash flow in 2023 in the absence of federal reform.
Anthony, let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it at all. I don't like any of those markets. I mean, California, Colorado, Oregon, they're saturated. They're black market driven. They're saturated up and down the value chain, from everything from cultivation, processing down to retail. With the exception of California, as I truly believe that if you want to have a brand in the cannabis space, you need to be in California. You need to have staying power in California. You need to be able to prove you can get traction with the consumer in California. That being said, I'm probably looking towards their earnings in the future when they go over CapEx deployment. I'd have to guess that whatever is cut from the West Coast, they're going to be deploying it in the Northeast and start to build out their footprints there, which ultimately are going to be more profitable. But I don't really see this happening in other markets. Like, for instance, Florida. They allowed for more retail licenses. However, we don't have the Emerald Triangle in the state of Florida.
Right.
We don't have this massive black market that's coming in from other places that's just taking over and cannibalizing the legal market. I don't really see this as a trend in these markets that are profitable. Now, if I see companies start to exit something like Arizona, where there isn't a large black market from a cultivation perspective, however, I mean, there probably is more of a black market from a cartel perspective with product that's coming over the border, then I think there'd be cause for concern. But I mean, those three markets, California, Colorado, Oregon, and then you add Washington, I mean, they're poster childs for where people didn't want to really invest capital. Back in 2018, 2019. So, I mean, this isn't really surprising.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Anthony, that by saying that, I think I'd be more concerned if it starts happening in Arizona and places like that in Florida. Because I think one of the overarching concerns of what Curaleaf just did is that people are looking at this and saying, okay, fine, they're pulling back from very mature markets where margins are lower, a lot more competition, etc. But is this what the future of the industry looks like in Florida, for example, right? Is this where, because becoming a mature market is just a function of time. So in these semi-mature markets, in these newer markets, these new states are opening up. Is that what the future lies 5-10 years down the road when they become mature? And I guess you're saying that not necessarily because they can grow all this marijuana in California and Colorado, places like that, right? So you're saying that it's a function of geography as more than a function of time.
I think it's a total function of geography. I mean, you can't grow weed outdoors in Florida. I mean, there's pests, there's mold, there's mildew. Yep. It is not an environment to grow cannabis. You will never have or be able to replicate the Emerald Triangle in Florida, or what you see in Oregon, or what you see in Washington, Colorado as well. Those markets happen to be able to sustain outdoor grown cannabis at scale that finds its way into the market. It's never going to happen in the South. It's probably never going to happen in the Northeast. I mean, we're not growing wine like they do up in Sonoma in Florida. I mean, we have citrus down in Florida. It doesn't grow in certain parts of the country. Those happen to just be geographically blessed to be able to sustain cannabis.
Okay, fair enough. But you're not worried about trucks and like the
product.
Transport, logistics, bringing stuff over from, obviously, it won't be as plentiful, but
that's illegal. That's illegal.
Yeah, it still happens though, as we know, right? Cropped over and it's widespread.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same element as the product of. I mean, I've been up to NorCal where you have these depots, we'll call them, of just product that people are just selling by the pound, and it just keeps going. And it's black market product, but it's sold like it's white market product.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that happening in other states. I mean, we get plenty of black market product in Florida. I've seen counterfeit vape cartridges from dealers on the street in like Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and I mean that stuff finds its way here, but I don't think it's going to impact the market like a Florida market the way that it does out west.
Well, think about it. We're business focused, and most business people live in cities. If you go to Oregon, like, what's the surplus of weed where people are growing their own and within that state? What was some of the numbers that you were showing? Is like, what's the cost for an ounce within that state?
I mean, you can go to Oregon. You can go to Oregon right now, and there's literally signs outside of dispensaries that say $80 an ounce, $60 an ounce.
Yeah.
Granted, it's not Tropicana cookies that looks like gas that you're going to buy from Jungle Boys, but I mean, it's smokable marijuana. And if you want to also go on the thesis that we're going into a recession and the consumer is going to curb spending, they're not going to go buy the $280 ounce of indoor hydro from Curaleaf, they're going to go buy the $80 ounce from the dispensary down the street because it's economical.
Yeah. Well, I think the big overarching topic or question that gets brought here is that we've talked about this even with other guests, Ben, and other podcasts, where profitability has to be at the forefront for these companies this year. Market share needs to be put to the side. Do you think that, well, it's pretty clear that the message is getting through that this is going to be the strategy. These companies have to, don't you think?
Yeah, I think market share is always important. I think market share at all costs, where you're just discounting to the point where you're losing money, is what you're talking about, which a lot of these companies won't be willing to do, and hence probably what we're seeing here with the pullout with Curaleaf in these lower margin, lower profitability states where there's just not enough margin there to really sustain operations, so they're redeploying resources. But absolutely, and I am very curious to see what the earnings reports are going to be this year. For some of these companies, because obviously we're going into a consumer recession to some point. There's price wars. Wholesale cannabis pricing is depressed. So will margins be able to hold up? Can they sustain like 50% margins on cannabis sales over time? I think that's going to be the big key. And it's going to be interesting to see what these reports are coming up and how much the consumer is pulling back with, swag, if you want to call it, or lower quality, product that finds its way on the market.
Yeah.
I think there's also a fine line to this because, it can't be, it could be telegraphed that Curaleaf is closing the West Coast operations to deploy CapEx elsewhere, but they can't chase profitability perpetually. You're going to run out of markets to go shut up shop and then extract value out of until it goes to zero.
Right.
So at some point in time, they're going to have to prove that they can go into these tough markets, they can operate, and they can win over a consumer. If they can't do that, it's good night. It's going to be the only people that are going to survive in cannabis are going to be these one-off dispensaries that are either premium brands or economy class brands.
That's a great point.
And that's, they can't just. Granted, I know this game very well because from a venture standpoint in the cannabis industry, a lot of guys were like, Oklahoma just opened up. Deploy millions of dollars, build, grow infrastructure, sell, while it's at a premium, especially when you talk about like distillate and wholesale pounds, and then you just ride the wave down. But while you're riding the wave down, you're making so much money that you're getting an ROI, and then you basically pull out, go to New Mexico, go to Arkansas, go to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That game works, but we're a finite country. You're gonna the gig's gonna be up sooner or later. So I'm definitely curious to see how that turns out. Which it's probably going to be years down the road until you get anything that's telegraphed. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at everything, maybe these conglomerates don't work. Maybe the recipe for success is like Jungle Boys or Cookies or these high profile brands that have actually established brand with the consumer. They go in. They partner with somebody, and that's really the product that's
a great
winning.
Point because that's a great point, Anthony, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I think about some of the concerns about pulling out of these saturated mature markets, because eventually Florida is going to be a mature market, right? It's semi-mature right now, but it's and obviously adult use cannabis is not there yet, so it's not unlocked full potential. But a lot of these like semi-mature and new states eventually will become mature, right? So the foreshadowing is there. They're going to have to be able to operate and be profitable at some point. And that goes back to the conversation about safe banking, federal cannabis reform, and creating national brands. I think that's what you're really going to have to be a consumer packaged good company, national brands to really sustain profitability and to operate everywhere, at a sustained margin and profitability over time.
And I hate to beat the dead horse, but you know who's going to be able to do that? And you know who knows how to do that? Constellation.
Wow.
Canopy.
You're riding that Constellation brand. Well, makes sense.
Think about who operates right now from coast to coast in a low margin business, wins the consumer, and also pushes product through millions of channels.
Yeah.
Constellation.
Yeah.
They know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, you guys talked about some of these saturated markets. Ayr Wellness announced that it's exiting its $55 million Chicago dispensary buy. The reason, they want to focus again and optimize their business and prioritize their efforts in markets that they can build meaningful depth and drive strong revenue cash flow. But the state of Illinois just reported record sales for adult use sales for the year at $1.5 billion in 2022. So what do you think's the reasoning behind this? I get the idea of strategizing and focusing on markets where they can generate the most revenue, but why leave a market like Illinois knowing it's performing the way it is? What do you think, Anthony?
If I had to guess, it's a function of probably both sides realizing the seller probably realizes that these assets are gold mines. We don't want to sell them going into the way the capital markets are structured right now from a stock performance perspective.
Yeah, good point.
And also, I mean, if I was a shareholder of AYR, sure, it's a good headline. Sure, it's an entry point, or it's expanding the footprint in Illinois. But I mean, let's be real: $55 million for 2 dispensaries, that is rich, to say the least. So I mean, I think they probably came to terms and were like, yeah, let's just not do this. Let's go on our way and figure out how to deploy the capital elsewhere where we could probably get a better return on our investment. That being said, I'm almost positive Illinois is rolling out a pretty aggressive social equity platform, which is going to be tailored towards retail. So you're probably going to see the retail footprint greatly expand in that market in the coming months to years. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to be paying a premium of over $25 million per retail location right now anyway.
That's a good point. Ben, remember we had that conversation with Jordan when we were in Chicago back in September? He was talking about some of the challenges that some of these companies have to face within the state of Illinois. There was a couple of things about write-offs that they were saying, but a lot of stuff that really surprised me on it's not as lucrative as it might seem operating within the state of Illinois.
Yeah, I think so. I think Anthony probably nailed a lot of that. Their financial analysts went over the deal before, and I don't think it's about profitability. I think they can make money if by closing the acquisition. I think it's just a matter of deploying resources. And also, they probably have the benefit of hindsight now. When that deal was first consummated, now it's whatever, 12 months or 9 months later, whatever that time has elapsed. And maybe they're seeing, a slowdown that they don't like, or maybe they're seeing more entrants than they originally thought would be there. Maybe it's just the fact where they're just trying to save money on their balance sheet, and that becomes more of an important factor than getting the accretive $5 or $10 million that they'd earn off this acquisition. So it's just a matter of redeploying resources, and I think if I had to guess, that's what it's about. But no doubt, whether it's Illinois or places even like New York City, some of the social justice, centric sort of governments, it's not necessarily the most capitalistic place to deploy capital at the moment.
You wonder what for the investors that are left in this space, if they start to push reset and come up with a new strategy, maybe with some of the smaller tier 2 companies that are creating profitability. But it'll be interesting to see how the year progresses and unfolds if we see more and more announcements and how this plays out, right?
Yeah, I think so. And there's something to be said for that. I know some people are of that mindset where the smaller operator is perhaps the place to deploy money. Previously, up until this point, it's been almost all the narrative has been about deploying in capital in the Curaleafs and the tier 1s of the world. But as we're seeing that, not all markets are created equal. So perhaps deploying capital in some of the smaller operators like C21 Investments, AmeriMed, some of the ones that are really targeted in 1 or 2 states or 3 states that are not that are in favorable jurisdictions to operate, maybe that is the place to go. And we're seeing some outperformance recently over the last, quarter or two with the small operators doing better than the tier 1s.
Yeah, when you break it down, actually, in Illinois with the $1.5 billion that they sold, if you really just wanted to do back of the napkin math, I mean, that's an average of $13.2 million per dispensary, which I'm assuming some dispensaries do much better than others. But I mean, with the margins that they're working on, a payback period, I'm paying $25 million per retail location is probably pretty lengthy.
Yeah. You just pulled that up right now, didn't you?
Yeah.
Good math.
Sleuthing.
That was very smart.
So
now you can understand why.
Yeah, I would probably have walked away from
Well,
that if I was
but
them as well.
obviously it depends because
If
Curaleaf has dispensaries that are grossing $100 million in revenue, right? So the size, I don't know what the size are for these Ayr
yeah.
dispensaries. If you're just going on the
Oh,
average,
I've
yeah.
been to the Cresco dispensary in Chicago, right in the middle of downtown. Every single time I've walked by it, there's a line around the block.
Really?
Even now?
Every single time.
Huh.
I would be one, and it's. I mean, I haven't been. Last time I was in Chicago was 9 months ago.
Okay.
Probably, but it was one of the busiest dispensaries I've ever seen. You walked into this place, it was like a toll booth. There was 8 registers. You have to order online, and you walk in, scan QR code, product out the door, and they were just rolling people all day long.
Wow.
And it was right smack dab in the middle of the city, right off the river. So I could probably assume that that's one of the highest grossing dispensaries in Chicago.
Well, Cresco has been performing the best here in early 2023 amongst the 4 to 5 MSOs. But like I said, if you wonder if you're going to start to see more and more announcements, and if so, you're going to start to see some of these smaller tier 2 companies that are already producing profitability take center stage when it comes to investment strategies. I want to shift now. Blue skies on the horizon. Gold prices seeing the best start in the year since 2012, flirting with the technical bull market. Prices overnight earlier this week climbed to $19.40 an ounce, pushing it briefly into a bull market. Wow, there is positive side in this market. Prices up nearly 20% from the 2-year lows back in November. So I guess a question for both of you, Ben, we'll start, but what do you think is producing this, renewed momentum?
Well, when I look at pricing for commodities such as gold, precious metals, I tend to look at the macro because if you look at the micro and just like try to chart it out, it's like the weather, right? You never know what it's going to be. These moves work on long-term trends. And I think that if you look at the long-term trend, I think people just want to preserve wealth. They see, such thing. They want hard assets to get into. And I think that's becoming a priority, especially with things like, CBDCs or central bank digital currencies being discussed. I mean, that's not something that's going to be introduced tomorrow or next month, but, we're getting closer to the period where, these type of realities may be in place, and people are looking to get into hard assets, and putting a demand on gold, and central banks are buying throughout the world. So I think that's creating a long-term tailwind for a move in these sort of commodities. So I would expect this to continue. I think people are just going to roll into hard assets over time, and gold's going to be a beneficiary of that.
Anthony, with 1 to 2 U.S. rate hikes on the horizon, could we see increased price in gold from where it is now?
Yeah. I mean, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I would have said gold probably be around 5, 6, 7, 10 grand by now. I mean, there's also a pretty big discrepancy between the paper price that you just mentioned, that 19 and change, and the actual spot price to get it delivered into your hand, which is more in the neighborhood of 2150. But when you look at Russia, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, they're all developing gold-backed cryptocurrencies right now, which means that they're big buyers in the physical market, which could be driving it up. But I mean, I own gold. I continue to buy gold. I continue to buy silver. I like hard metals. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice feeling to know that if I've got an American Eagle or I've got a Krugerrand or a Canadian Maple Leaf, it is literally worth the same anywhere in the world at that point in time, from a value perspective. So I mean, people are getting smart. People are getting a little bit bearish on the dollar, which they should. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think that gold has been suppressed by just the way the market's constructed.
Well, if it's been suppressed,
with
how
the
do you
actual
see it
paper
playing
price.
out then over the next quarter?
I wouldn't be surprised if it rips. I mean, I think gold can go for a ride. People are. I mean, you can see sovereign nations. You can see central banks are buying the metal. They buy it all the time, and they take delivery of it. And they're smart. They don't buy the paper product. They buy the physical product, because the paper product really isn't worth shit at the end of the day. The physical product in your hand is all that matters, and that price is about 10% higher than what the spot is right now, or the paper price.
Speaking of like long-term macro trends, it's things like what we saw this week when the U.S. government hit the debt ceiling, right? Democratic lawmakers are actually proposing that there be no debt ceiling anymore. So just think about that, right? Where they want to completely, not even have spending limits in the U.S. government. I don't know if it's going to go through or not, but these are the types of things that are being talked about.
I kind of
right?
agree with that. Yeah, but I kind of agree with that.
Okay. Well, whether you agree or not, it's still to not have a spending on debt limit and to go full fiat where there is no limits. Essentially, that's the type of thing that
we're never paying back the debt. We're never paying back the debt anyway.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are we going to pay the debt? Who's going to pay the debt?
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
The debt is the debt is absolutely insurmountable. So to just have these gymnastics and these conversations where we talk about a debt ceiling or increasing it, I mean, let's be real. The U.S. is going to print money until we're Argentina. Like, there's no...
Listen, I agree with you 100%.
I could be
I
very
agree with you
wrong,
100%. It's just the optics of it, right? To not even have a debt ceiling. It goes on your point with the weakness in the U.S. dollar, right? I mean, these are not going to be good optics, and it's not going to inspire confidence to not have anything, even though it's breached all the time every year, and we know it gets broken.
It's a joke.
It is a joke, for sure.
I mean, it's a joke. I mean, it's a headline. They talk about it. They say they're going to resolve it. They resolve it. They move it up. We print more money. We go farther in debt. We've never paid off our debt. Who the fuck are we going to pay the debt off to?
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So that debt is simply it's a credit card balance that simply just keeps getting increased until either the dollar implodes or we just figure out a new system for fiat.
Yep. 100%. I'm curious to know whether Bitcoin will ever become what gold is today, right? Because it hasn't been that store of value that everybody hoped it would. Will it ever get there, Anthony? That's my question to you.
Yeah, I'm buying Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
So do you anticipate it will become a store of value, like a gold? Because it hasn't to this point.
I think Bitcoin is a store of value.
Mm-hmm. Which we discussed earlier.
How's Bitcoin not a store of value? It's
what do you mean?
It's proven that the decentralized
it went down 75% last year. It went down 75% for the top. Gold went down 10%. It hasn't been a store of value at all.
I mean, stores of value can have volatility.
No.
I mean, look at what Bitcoin's done. Look what Bitcoin's done lately. I mean, I'm not calling it sound money. I think the definition of sound money versus store of value is a completely different thing. I don't think Bitcoin is money. I don't think Ethereum is money. I think Bitcoin's a store of value, and I think Ethereum is software at its core, and I mean, they should be treated accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, I probably should have used the term stable store of value as opposed to just a store of value.
It's not stable. I mean, if you can't, I would get laughed off stage if you called Bitcoin or cryptocurrency anything remotely stable, referring to Ethereum and Bitcoin. But I mean, I do think that Bitcoin works. It didn't blow up with FTX and with all this other bullshit. It is decentralized. It works. I'm buying it, and a lot of other people right now are buying Bitcoin alongside gold.
Yeah. I had a conversation. Big crypto conference is going to be taking place later this year in Toronto, Canada. They want you to be speaking, by the way, Anthony. Now that I give you the heads up, but there's a lot of people within this space that have really learned, and you've been saying this the last few podcasts, that are really understanding that let's not focus on all these things within the ecosystem of crypto. Let's focus on one or two things that actually are meaningful and could be a more stable investment moving forward, which is Bitcoin and Ethereum. You're seeing a big rally within these two assets. So my question is, where do you see, I guess, the big learning lesson that people will, I guess, from an investment strategy standpoint, focus on here in 2023? Like, what have we learned, and what do you see more trends that people will come to fruition pertaining to this as the year progresses?
I mean, I think the biggest lesson is don't listen to what anybody tells you on the internet. Form your own opinions, especially when you're allocating capital, and don't invest unless you have a sound understanding of what you're putting money into.
Yeah.
For instance, like Ethereum and Bitcoin, if you did buy at 60,000 and at 4,800, sure, your timing was off, but you should have allocated enough capital to where it didn't matter. You didn't feel it. Like the people that literally leveraged up their credit cards and refied their houses to put their money into crypto, like that's just irresponsible behavior. They deserve everything they got.
Well, when you Google
Like-
crypto news, it's like the top 4 stories are about how somebody was scammed $500,000 for putting their money into, and I'm like, that seems
Okay, but how many people
ahead.
have gotten scammed for putting money into the CSE and putting money into OTC stocks?
Yeah.
I know plenty of people that have lost shitloads of money
100%,
in
100%.
private placements, in private placements, going into traditional equities and into finance. So I mean, sure, and that's what the media and that's what everybody wants to do.
grabs attention,
But
right?
But at the same time, all of the major financial institutions and all the guys that sit here and say crypto's a pet rock, Bitcoin is not going to work, it's a fad, they're all buying it. They're all buying it. They're all passively investing into the infrastructure that's being deployed, and it's because they want to get it at cheaper prices.
So a lot of the word I'm reading is the Bitcoin rally has been built on low trading volume. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, comparatively speaking, sure. I mean, any trading volume is going to be lower right now as to what we were seeing 2 years ago.
Is that a risk?
I mean, that was a fucking mania.
Is that a risk?
No. I mean, what you want to see with crypto is you want to see the capital inflows and the capital outflows. If you see large wallets loading Bitcoin and Ethereum onto exchanges and liquidating, that's a very bad sign.
Yeah. Okay.
If you see small wallets purchasing as well as big wallets purchasing and then taking those tokens off chain, that's very bullish. I mean, granted, volume is a metric that should be taken seriously, but the inflows and the outflows on hot currency going on exchanges is a really good metric to measure the health of the overall.
Okay, speaking
sector.
of which, in the wake of like FTX collapse and things like that, concerns about Binance and Coinbase being exposed in a bankruptcy where your assets could get pulled, I've been noticing that some bigger medium-sized or bigger wallets have been, redeploying their Bitcoin back on some of the exchanges like Coinbase. Do you see that as a good sign or a bad sign?
What do you mean?
Well,
redeploying?
I've been seeing wallets transfer 35 million of Ethereum or Bitcoin back on the Coinbase exchange, for example.
Are they selling it, or are they selling it, or they're just putting it on?
They're putting
on
it
the
on the
exchange?
exchange. So is that a sign that confidence is coming back to the Coinbases and that the crisis is over, in your opinion, or maybe this is the wrong take?
I mean, I think the confidence is. I mean, I think everybody needs to get ready for FTX to become an operating company again. I mean, I think they're going to bring it back.
Really?
It's going to come back. I mean, FTX was a really good product. I mean, you got to forget that FTX didn't fail. FTX itself didn't fuck over the customers. The relationship that FTX had with Alameda Research and Sam Bankman-Fried sitting in the middle is what caused the blow up. But FTX US works. FTX Japan works. FTX International, it works. Like, the exchange works. The product is great.
So
it was the operator and it was the relationship that was just siphoning money out of the exchange is what blew everything up.
So you're saying FTX could come back?
John Ray, who's the guy from Enron that was installed, said that there's a very big possibility they can fire back up FTX US and get it going again.
Wow.
There is not. I mean, just to reiterate what I just said, the thing that happened with FTX was not a failure in the product; it was a failure of the operators. FTX at its core, the technology didn't rob anybody. The technology didn't get hacked. There was a backdoor that was put in by the operator that was architecting the entire operation, that was siphoning money from A and putting it in B. I mean, you take that out of the equation, the core product and the technology works.
Sounds like they need a serious rebranding campaign. Shad, what do you think? Should we reach out to John?
Granted. Okay. So with the caveat that I don't think they relaunched the exchanges with FTT, which was their token that they were printing to create all that liquidity for Sam and all of his buddies.
Yeah.
That they'd probably wipe off the table, and you would see FTX come back as a product
So what
like
happened
Coinbase.
to the token holders?
I would completely trust
What happens
FTX.
to the token holders?
I would
Do they
completely
still-
trust those token holders. Those FTT holders are probably fucked. They're probably never seeing their money back. But if FTX came back tomorrow under a different regime, they don't have the clean out the entire system. They don't have the affiliation with Alameda. I would probably use it.
Yeah. Well, if I'm going to do a branding strategy for FTX, I'm bringing in the Pope, I'm bringing in Oprah, I'm bringing in Michelle Obama.
No, you know who you bring in? You bring in people from Main Street. You bring in the normal people that basically
Good
say,
point.
okay, we're using FTX again.
Good point.
Because that's who you need to
100%.
get the trust. No one's ever trusting
No.
famous people again in crypto.
You're right.
No.
Like that's
The crypto
that's
industry
dumb.
needs
Nor do I think
less Michael Saylors and needs less of that bullshit. Anthony Pomplianos. We need less of
Yeah.
that bullshit and just more, regular people, right?
No one gives a shit about
correct.
Hollywood anymore, I find.
But I also don't think that celebrities are going to do crypto or financial backed endorsements with the lawsuit that's being slapped on Tom Brady and the likes of all of the ambassadors from FTX.
What is the FTX lawsuit against Tom Brady? Do you know?
People are saying that they were liable for talking them into essentially putting their assets in FTX.
Is there an amount?
And
is there an amount yet?
I have no idea, but to be honest, I mean they've probably got indemnity clauses that are pages long in those contracts. And like I said, at the end of the day, those celebrities were endorsing FTX. FTX worked. FTX still works. Sam Bankman-Fried was the problem.
I hope it doesn't go anywhere.
I think that
with
lawsuit
the FTX
doesn't
and
go
the lawsuit
anywhere.
with Tom Brady.
It's not going.
Just because, if it does that, I think that has the potential to shake up the endorsement industry across several industries. Because what you're saying is that there's a fiduciary responsibility of the person who is advertising to know everything about that company. I mean, it's not Tom Brady's fault that FTX.
Yeah,
but there is
no, but
I think but hold on, but that's a very gray area because I do believe that representative and that ambassador does have a fiduciary responsibility to what they are marketing. But at the same time, like I've said, FTX and the product that Tom Brady was marketing and the product that everybody else was marketing, it worked.
Yeah.
They weren't marketing the FTT token. They were marketing the FTX Exchange. The FTX Exchange at its core fucking
is what
works.
You're saying. Okay, that's good.
It didn't. The FTX Exchange.
No, I get that, but I have to
just
one point though. How would Tom Brady? Is it his responsibility to know that Alameda Research fucked their responsibility fiduciary?
What do you mean? He
exactly.
couldn't.
He couldn't.
That's why I don't think the lawsuit's going to go
Exactly.
anywhere.
That's all I'm saying, right? He advertised FTX, but he had no idea that they weren't doing the proper checks and balances with client money, for example, right? So he's not responsible for that.
You're completely right. Granted, I'm sure there's some attorneys out there that could flip that on its head and present an argument where it does paint Tom Brady and the likes and Larry David as liable, but I really don't think that's, and I don't have a legal background, so I'm kind of just giving my opinion, but I mean, I don't think it goes anywhere.
All right, gents, we're about 40 minutes in. I'll let you guys run. Last before I go, great tweet last night, actually, Ben. Rick Doblin on Fox Business News talking about Q2 2024 that we could see MDMA legalized. So, I know a lot of people aren't talking about psychedelics. I do strongly believe we will be one day. I think this is really going to take off in the next 9 to 12 months based on legalization and more promising data that's taking place. Small Pharma with an incredible announcement this week as well regarding DMT. And
great CEO.
I actually bought Small Pharma. I was shocked that with the numbers that they released, 57% remission rate. Granted, it was only a few dozen patients in phase 2A, but these were home run numbers. I actually bought some shares at around 11 cents. It was only up 1 cent after hardly any run up after those numbers. They have $23 million cash on the balance sheet, and their market cap undiluted was only $35 million at the close after they released results. So the market's only valuing that company at like 11 or 12 million in that research. So I had to buy, and I think it's just great. I mean, another really good data point for the industry.
Some of the conversations I've had this week, healthcare companies, insurance companies are tired of providing coverage for drugs that don't work. I spoke to Peyton Nyquist, who was at the JP Morgan Health Conference, speaking to Goldman Sachs. He's saying the same message as he was 12 months ago. It's just people are starting to understand more and more about how pathway to revenue is going to work. And more of these institutions, have you said, Anthony, that this is an institution play right now. If they start to understand and see the compelling data that produces more, and then you probably bring in legalization, for like, say, something like an MDMA. I have no idea how much growth and, opportunity there is in this space, but it's going to upend a large portion of the big pharma landscape once this stuff starts to become legalized. I saw a smirk on your face. What are you smiling at?
Because what the fuck does J.P. Morgan and Goldman care? They invest in the pharma companies that are selling all of that medication.
But
as
I'm
well.
saying
they're double ending the entire industry.
But to get invited to these conferences, to be into the same conversations, and to have the conversations with these people is the starting point, 100%.
I mean, J.P. Morgan's been inviting psychedelic companies for the past probably year and a half, 2 years.
Right, but that's my...
I think that there's but for them to say that they're sick of serving the non-effective medication to people, meanwhile they're heavily leveraged
Morgan,
to all
but
those
different healthcare providers, insurance companies are saying this.
Yeah,
100% they are.
Yeah, J.P. Morgan, they're probably lending money to the insurance companies, and then they're investing in the pharma companies.
Yeah,
they play both.
I mean, one thing that I've read. Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah.
But I mean, one thing that I read this week that I thought was crazy were these hard drug stores that are popping up in BC.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
what? Like, how?
Well, they decriminalized all drugs within the city of Vancouver. Is it the city of Vancouver or BC? I don't remember the top of my head. For everybody who wants to correct me, leave a comment below. But this is what's going on. But I will say that addiction is. It's sad, what goes on in the province of BC. Like, it is a very, very serious thing. And I think if you're not, I guess, suffering from addiction, a lot of people are in the business pertaining to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Anthony looks like he's froze there, but no worries. I wanted to get his pick for the football, but who you got this weekend for picks? Ben?
You guys were frozen for the last, 30 seconds.
So are you, but whatever. We'll picks football.
I like the Eagles. I'm going to start. I like the Eagles actually. I'm thinking about. I made some pretty decent profits, so I kind of pulled my money out. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to bet. Probably a small amount, but I kind of like the Eagles. I think Brock Purdy on the road. I think his time is up. So I say Eagles -2.5.
All right, Anthony.
I got Eagles Bengals. I think Eagles Bengals both win.
Yep, I think you're right. Eagles Bengals. Those are my pick. We won't go Super Bowl pick. But I think Mighty Joe's getting a Super Bowl this year.
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
Dude, I want him.
Dude,
I want him.
Dude, this guy's a winner.
I want him to.
This guy's gonna win.
I want him to.
He's gonna win all the Super Bowls.
I think the Eagles are the most underrated team in the NFL.
Yeah.
And they have an elite defense and an elite offense.
You know what?
If Joe Burrow's O-line has any cracks in it against the Eagles, they're going to eat him for lunch.
Isn't it funny how the Eagles get no love?
They don't. They don't get any love, and they're going to. I think they could. Granted, I think the Bengals win the Super Bowl. I want the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. The Eagles could easily win the Super Bowl.
Brotherly love, get some love, and the Eagles fly, Eagles fly.
I mean, they're good. They're real good.
All right, gents, have a great weekend, and appreciate the feedback. And let's keep this crypto rally going, and let's see where gold prices going into next week. But we'll check back in with you next week.
Everything only goes up, hopefully, from here on out.
Yes.
Let's
agreed.
go Bitcoin 24,000. Let's see if we can break that benchmark. That's going to be interesting.
Bitcoin 100K.
All I do is win no matter what. Got money on my mind. Could never give it up, right? All right, I'll stop. All right, see you next week. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. 2023 is here, and right now, a lot of uncertainty pertaining to the markets, especially new emerging industries like crypto, cannabis, psychedelics, and more. So leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview. What are the questions that you want asked? And most importantly, what's the information that you want to learn? Once we produce these videos, then share this to your network, subscribe to our channel, and click on that bell for all notifications, because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.